that's why it's a volume numbers game, because you have to try to talk to as many people or get in front of as many people as possible over a long period of time, because then your chances are greatly increased, right?
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Pursuit of Purpose. My name is Chris Kiefer, and today I am joined by James Weis, who is the owner and founder of Tactic Agent. Would you call yourself an agency, James?
Not anymore. It's consultancy.
Consulting
Yeah,
firm, yeah.
yeah,
Thank you, first of all, James, for coming on.
absolutely. Happy to be here.
And our paths cross because we are both HubSpot certified partners. And James was giving just a incredibly valuable presentation on the prospecting tool that and features, I should say, that HubSpot has recently added to their sales hub. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. But before we get into like the weeds on that stuff, I'd love for you to give like your HubSpot bio, or like how have you interacted, used it, and how long have you worked with it, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, sure. So I've been using HubSpot. The way I said, I've been a HubSpot user since 2012, and I've been a HubSpot partner since 2015. I prior to starting Tactic, I owned a full service marketing agency where HubSpot was a part of what we did at the agency, but it was everything from print design to web development to video production. We had two videographers on staff. I had about 15 people. I had in-house SDRs that we did sales prospecting for folks, and so that was all going really well up until the pandemic hit. I was pretty well established in B2B hard tech industry. Um, and
When you say hard tech, what do you mean by hard tech?
Yeah, hard tech meaning like not software, right? So like
Oh,
physical
okay.
servers or data center products and things like that.
Okay.
Um, so those retainers kind of all left at the same time,
Hmm.
unfortunately. So hung on as long as I could, but I kind of figured out what I wanted to do based on what I learned in the agency. And the reason I started Tactic was when we were doing HubSpot services, HubSpot work in the agency. My whole thing was just buy HubSpot. I have the people. I have SDRs. I have marketing people. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. And it worked well for a while. But at the end of the day, the person on the other end of my video calls wasn't getting the I wasn't imparting any knowledge to them. They weren't getting any value out of HubSpot other than us.
You weren't teaching them how to fish. You were just fishing for them and giving them the food.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So that's where I kind of am part of that agency world, especially retainers. Like the worst word in the world is churn, right? Like you don't want anybody to churn in the agency world. Um, so trying to learn from all that, that's what I started Tactic is one, embracing churn, right? So like the way I do my business and the way I price everything is there's an end in sight, right? My goal is to teach somebody how to use HubSpot in the most efficient way possible for their business, um, and have some sort of way that I know when the
When we're
relationship's going to
done.
end, so
Yeah.
I can plan for the future, and they also have an understanding that this is not a forever thing. So yeah, so that's been my journey with HubSpot and everything. Yeah.
I love that. And I was gonna, just for your sake, and I mean, there might be listeners that don't know my full backstory as well, but so I got an engineering degree from Carroll College, and I went to work in the engineering world. I lasted 6 months. First job out of college. I had several internships in college, but first real engineering job. 6 months in, I told my boss I was quitting, and I was going to start a production company, I guess, which was basically like Chris bought a drone and he thought it was cool and thought maybe people would pay for photos. And so it was like early, DJI Phantom and stuff. It was still cool back in what year would that have been? 2014. So that evolved into a full service, small business marketing company. And same thing, we did websites and video and social media and paid advertising and just it's fun. It's like very funny just with what you said. We were trying to do everything, and it also was incredibly stressful because and this is, I don't know if you have encountered or come across any marketing agencies that have really got it dialed. I have come across a few, but my view is that, and I tell this because I work primarily with painting companies. And so we've got all these processes and automations and systems that you just kind of insert into a painting company, and you automate some things, and or you get it set up, but then you hand it off and it's able to save them many, many hours, right? That's so niche. So now I can tell people, like, I work for painting companies, and not just any painting company, but between like 4 to 8 million is where they start to really need me. But the sweet spot is like 7 million to 15 million, is like anywhere in that range. If you're a painting company in that, like, I can save you so much time you're not even going to believe it. And it incorporates HubSpot and Zapier and Make and several other tools, just connecting it all together. That's like the freedom that has come from that level of focus of what I do versus, which you could probably relate to, in the old days.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
was doing a marketing agency, and every single person that walked in the door, it was something different. And we're like starting from square one. They want a website. They don't want to pay for the website though, but they want the video, but that's kind of expensive. Do we
Yeah.
have something cheap? It's just like, and there was no
It's never
repeatable,
ending. Yeah.
we didn't know like what the ROI was going to be because we never worked with this business before, you know? It was just an absolute headache.
Yeah, I tried a bunch of different things. I started, I focused more on the technical side of stuff. That's just kind of where I ended. So I'm a self-taught programmer as well. So I built a lot of custom integrations and a lot of stuff with the HubSpot CMS and HubDB and things like that. But I tried to, instead of focus on industry, focus on our internal process where, like, we had our webmaster services, which was 250 a month. You get a website. We did it all in Webflow. I had a nice process for Webflow developers and things like that, and that did okay. And but it's yeah. Once something comes in and rocks the boat just a little bit, you tip right over with any of that
Hmm.
stuff. So,
Yeah.
and very similar to how you went to the folk niche down on the industry. So I'm niching down on just HubSpot in general, right? So, like, everything HubSpot related. Um, and part of what I'm trying to do is build out these processes with my customers on Miro. So I use Miro to help map out complete processes, start to finish, for sales, marketing, customer service. Because when you're building things in HubSpot, you know you don't want to have one workflow that has like 19 branches and does all these different things, right? So it's hard to get a picture of what the entire process is just by looking at a list of workflows and a list of things in
100%.
HubSpot. So that's why we kind of build it out in Miro, and then each piece is linked to a different spot in HubSpot. So you get that whole picture, um, and that's towards the end of the working with customers, I do a lot of my screen sharing, and I'm building it for them, but I'm teaching them how I'm doing it, right? So my goal is, towards the end, is we flip flop, right? So now they share their screen, and I kind of just talk them through, or they ask questions as they go through, and it's been really good so far. It's been taking off.
I'm curious if you have any workflows that would be interested that you're able to show without like, I'm pulling up one myself because it's awesome. I already like where this is going because I realize that one of the most valuable things a consultant does is exactly what you just said. Like, my view is that there are many people that know HubSpot, many people that know Make or Zapier, but there's nobody that understands the painting business and knows those things as we do. And so
Hmm.
if you're in that space, and I'll share my screen right now. And for those of you listening or watching on Spotify or YouTube, you can see this. Um, but this is like a process of like the journey for a painting company. And I love what you said. What I have done, and this has been an evolution of how I map this out. But each yellow box is a automation, and it kind of identifies, so it kind of breaks it up, because this is the life cycle of a customer through the painting business. And the most important thing that I get excited about is that the blue boxes are employee actions, which trigger stuff to happen. The pink boxes are customer, check a box, input data, submit a form. And then the pink boxes are customer actions, like I accepted a proposal or I submitted a web form or something like that. But the red boxes are the automations. And that's the part that's like, when you see, like, this is everything that needs to happen in a painting business. Many businesses don't even know if they do it or not, because they've never sat down to say, what do we do when we get a quote, or, like, how does that work? But the thing that I think is even more powerful is that just getting to visually put some structure to what they feel is chaotic or varies from one job to the next. You just put in some simple decision trees of, like, you know, they're like, oh, well, it depends. Like, okay, tell me the different scenarios and what do you do in that scenario? Okay, build that out. What about this scenario? Build that out. You know what I mean? And that process, it always gets customized for each business. So, here's a different business. It looks, this was before I started doing those boxes, but there's similar things happening, but they're like process map that gets created, and then everything gets customized to that company, so that they, like, because it's no business is exactly the same, but most of the time it's like 70% the same.
Absolutely. And the vocabulary of what a company calls the thing inside the business is very, very important too, because that's how they're, we're there. I meet with clients once a week for an hour, but I'm available outside of those sessions. Um, but they're in it all day, every day. So being able to put it into the process, calling it exactly what they call it. So when they're going to, talk about it amongst themselves, it all makes sense. Like it's that I learned from. I used to have you might appreciate this. I used to have like a website, like a website vocabulary sheet. I used to send to clients. Like these aren't tabs; they're navigation items. Like things like that. So very very similar idea.
Yeah, I love it. That's just yeah, we have what I try, and I've shifted towards like the HubSpot language of like leads, marketing qualified, sales qualified, and whatnot, and just explain to people how we take these terms that are like industry standards and apply it to their business, so that, exactly like what you said, not only are we talking about the same thing, but the software is going to likely already, like, we can mirror or modify their language to, like, when they see something in HubSpot, they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Um, so I'm curious, going down this. You said you do like HubSpot. That's your niche. Like, when I am honest with myself, I know Sales Hub very well. The prospecting tools are brand new, so I put an asterisk minus the prospecting stuff, which I'm rapidly trying to learn. The Marketing Hub, I know decently well, but then the other hubs are like, I've never done anything with CMS, um, and Service Hub is not super applicable in the painting industry. Um, and then there's the Ops Hub. I guess I should say that's another one that is valuable, but it's a lot of just back end stuff. My question is, what would you say, which hub is like your number one expertise?
That's a good question. I mean, I use all of them. I use all of them pretty extensively pretty much for every customer. Um, I would say just because I'm not a content person and I don't create a lot of content. Like the Marketing Hub is probably one that's
As strong.
not one that I'm as strong in terms of like utilizing, but excuse me, but like Sales Hub, sorry, something in my throat. Sales Hub, I'm definitely strong in, and the CMS Hub is great. I've done a lot with the CMS Hub in terms of customization. Service Hub, I actually use. Uh, I'm working with a customer right now um, that we're using the Service Hub as a whole order processing pipeline. So we go from like a sales process right, to closed one, so that once the, anything financial that has to deal with the transaction that's on deals, then at a certain stage it creates a service hub. This way, people in shipping and the warehouse, they just have access to service hub. They don't have access to sales hub with all the sales data. And then build out a process that, with conditional properties and conditional sidebars and things like that. So depending on who owns the ticket, they get to see the data that they need, and then kind of move things along. Yeah, so Service Hub is very powerful, especially when you couple it with like the customer portal and the Knowledge Hub, the knowledge base, and surveys. I haven't gotten into surveys too much. I'm going to actually start. It's on my list to do, to start, reaching out to people after we do stuff. But it's the really nice thing about HubSpot is that it does everything really, really well. It doesn't do everything perfectly, but it does do a lot of, like, it's probably the only system that I've seen, and I've definitely used a lot, and I've built, especially on the website side, I've built a lot of websites in WordPress, Webflow, custom built stuff with, yeah, Next.js and Remix and all this other like crazy front end technologies. Just from a process point of view, like an internal, like your operational process, how marketing does a campaign, like not what it is, just how they execute it, right? How they're going to run ads, how they're going to report on it, how they're going to get landing pages and emails out. That's how they're going to manage the website on top of it. Like, it's all in one system that gives companies a lot of time back that they don't realize they're spending jumping from different things, or just having just this disparate system. So it's my long-winded answer to your question. Yeah.
So, so going down, it sounds like this topic of Sales Hub, which I feel like this is a part that would be relevant for my audience. Talk to me about the new features that they've brought in, prospecting being one of them. And you could even go super niche on some things that you think are super powerful that people are either unaware of, or you're like, I like to think of it as like when you get on a call with someone, what are the features that you're like, oh, let me show you this. You're going to be excited about this.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. When prospecting was announced a few months back, so it's still in beta right now. So I've been actually in the beta for a while, um, and the whole, if anybody has used task queues in the past, where like you had to start a task queue, and it worked really well. I utilized it a lot back in the agency days when we had the internal SDRs, because that's how I used to build tasks for them automatically. And they would start a task queue, and they would go and pull up the contact record with the activity that was on the task, and they can do what they had to do, hit done, and go to the next one. So if you're familiar with that, you'll have a real appreciation for prospecting, because what it does is it brings everything into one screen, right? So you have your schedule, you have your tasks in uh, like a little to do type of, like, what's due tomorrow, what's due today, what's overdue. If you use sequences, I heavily use sequences. So it gives you an idea of what sequence emails that are getting sent for you on that day on your behalf, and kind of brings everything front and center. But when you go one step into tasks from prospecting, the UI is completely different. So now, like, you could have all your tasks on one side on the left, and then it just brings up the record that it's associated with on the right. Instead of the old way was like, it was basically navigate to that associated record screen. So if it was associated to a contact, it would pull up the contact view, and it would have to do. So this is um, it makes working in it much nicer, much faster. Um, and the things that you're able to do inside of that screen is pretty nice as well. So if you have the LinkedIn Sales Navigator integration with HubSpot, you're able to send connection requests right from inside of HubSpot. You don't have to jump into LinkedIn and find the person and all this stuff. So you could have a task to do a LinkedIn connection. It pulls up the record for you. You click LinkedIn connection. It finds it for you, finds them on LinkedIn for you. Sometimes you have to match it to make sure it's the right person. But then you drop in your note, hit send, and when you hit if you have like all, like if the next batch of tasks are all LinkedIn tasks, you complete it, it'll automatically pull up the next record and then pull up the LinkedIn connection automatically, so for the next task. So I mean, I go through about 30. So I try to prospect to about 30 new people a day. That's my goal. And
And this is for your own
yeah,
business.
that's for tactic. That's what I do. So I spend the morning, you know, getting a list together. Who am I gonna like? Who's gonna be on my outreach list for the day? I try only to spend about a half hour on it.
And then when you say prospecting, is prospecting just LinkedIn and emails, or are you calling people also?
So I because it's just me, I'm just doing emails and LinkedIn. So the way I do it is, so I use Apollo as a data source, right, for contacts, and Apollo's great as another great integration with HubSpot, where you can save contacts in Apollo and it gets synced over to HubSpot. So that's where I do my, like, I create a list in Apollo of who I want to pull in. I save it in Apollo, which syncs it over to HubSpot, and then I have automations pick it up from there to enroll that contact in a sequence and start the process. So my sequences are, I kind of jump back and forth, testing different emails and different styles of prospecting. Now I just started a Pro 60 campaign is what I called it internally. Like, I'm gonna do it for 60 days to get a whole bigger span of data. I did 30-day increments with different lengths of emails. Um, but that's but part of that sequence is that LinkedIn step, right? So like the sequence automatically will add the task for me to reach out to them after they've received 2 emails from me. They then get a LinkedIn request for me, but the sequence will stop until I reach out to them on LinkedIn. Once I complete that task, then the sequence will pick back up a day after I complete the task to send them the next step in the sequence.
And so, a couple questions on that. First of all, how many other people do you have at your consulting company to help do this? Is it just you running solo?
It's just me running solo. That's it.
Do you have any VAs or anyone that's helped you with that piece of it?
No, I thought about it, but I haven't really hit that need yet. I don't think. Because I was able to build the automation, because I have the data. Like, I don't need uh, I don't need to do a whole lot of research, because I'm sure there's a better way to do a deeper sales, stuff. If somebody was doing sales as their full-time job at a place, there's probably more things that you can do in here. But for me, since I'm servicing clients and I'm trying to do other stuff, and I try to make it as efficient as possible, and being able to, bring 30 people in a day into the system is worked pretty well so far. In my I'm 1 week into my this Pro 60 campaign, and I have three new connection meetings, like cold connection meetings booked.
And the next question would be, are you finding that, I'm assuming that you are trying to connect with people that are already using HubSpot and feeling like they're underutilizing it?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So in Apollo, you're able to segment based on technology, right? So whether or not they actually use it is it's like, it's in my first email, like checking if they do actually use HubSpot, because that's,
Just asking them, and then
well, as part, like, I go into it a little bit deeper, but I say, like they came up in my research for, people that are utilizing HubSpot, is that the case? And then I kind of go into my intro. Because if it's not, then, that either they'll tell me it's not, or they'll ignore it, and that's fine. Um, but just to check.
yeah, totally. And then so you're helping people with more, like, maximizing HubSpot in a better way, which I'm sure, like, that's just seems like such a great. I can see why that would be just a cold email and LinkedIn. You're doing those touches, but they're ultimately engaging, and they're raising their hand saying, "Hey, I would like to ask you some more questions about what you do." Maybe that does make sense.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. And trying to get uh, because there's so much change that happens in HubSpot often, very often, and being, being able to utilize. So I'm a certified trainer as well. So I got my training certificate from HubSpot as well. So being able to put that in an email, like you're going to have a HubSpot certified trainer effectively on your team that you can reach out to make sure to check or to work with.
What's the difference between the partner and the trainer?
So the trainer is just like,
Because are you also a partner?
yes, yeah. So I'm a partner, and so I'm a partner and a trainer. The trainer is like just a separate certificate that you have to meet a certain criteria, like it's a certain level of partnerships. So you have to be gold or above, and it's effectively just a course. So it allows me to one, I could do group trainings, but um, they kind of position it more of like very they back everything. One, HubSpot will back everything I teach or everything I do because I'm a certified trainer, and they any type of like general courses I wanted to give on HubSpot, they have to be at the same par as the HubSpot Academy in terms of quality and stuff. But I kind of put a different twist on it where I call it all tailored training. Like I'm not going to show you generally how to use HubSpot, right? For the first like two or three, so I usually work with clients for about 12 weeks, 12 sessions, right? About 12 weeks. The first like three sessions were never even in HubSpot, right? Like I have to understand the business first and understand processes and how we're going to uh, utilize it in HubSpot. And a lot of the times, people just have a problem, like I can't, like I have to get this email out and this is giving me an error. I don't know how to fix this. And of course we'll take care of that. But I found that like teaching and training people about the software in context of what they have to do on a day-to-day basis sticks much faster than kind of general concepts in terms of when you want to do this thing, when you want to do a campaign, this is how you do it. Well, if they have a campaign that they need to get out, they're gonna embrace it much more.
So yeah, you're the you basically are the way I'm curious also with the prospecting in particular, that I assume is you're utilizing it in your own business and you're able to have you're diving deeper personally and able to identify the resources and tools that are there that some people that maybe have dabbled in it they didn't even realize they could do that or set it up, because that's what I feel like is it's the most valuable thing that a consultant could do is provide structure to a pre-existing process that they may or may not know they have, and then fully integrate that structured process into HubSpot, and now you're automating tasks and saving even more time, but it's their process.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's what they need to do. Right. So we'll go through. This is pretty common that when we start mapping stuff out in Miro, if it's a sales process, it's very common to then, two sessions in kind of jump back and say, well, where are we getting these prospects? Like, how can we get more of this beginning part? Right. And so we'll do a lead gen process that feeds into a sales process, right? But it's still that, yeah, that's 100% right. It's still theirs, right? And what becomes more apparent as you force somebody or you force a business to actually look at their process in that way, like on a chart, they start to question everything, right? And I question everything. Why do things this way? Like, is this really important or not, right? Can we do this in this step so we can save 4 steps later on? That type of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that just the it's crazy to me now that I've been in it how few businesses have taken the time to use a tool like Miro, because I'm exactly like you. Like number one, I'm like, hey, I don't work here, so this is for me, but it's also like originally I thought it was for me. Like I just need to clarify that what you're saying is what I showed here, and they're like, no, 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 that's only part of it. And like, okay, great. And then you realize that the other employee didn't, they thought there was a totally different process. It's like nobody's on the same page because no one has ever said this this is what we agree is prospecting, right?
Right.
Because some reps are like, oh, I sent some emails. Someone else is like, oh, I thought we were supposed to knock on doors, or it's just like that's everybody does it slightly differently, and then it also makes it hard to make improvements because you don't have a consistent set of data to consistently, audit and make tweaks and improvements. Like from the sounds of it, like you're saying, if I heard you correctly, you were doing a 30-day little drip sequence with some mixed of tasks and LinkedIn requests. And now you're like, I'm going to do 60 days, but you're going to have after 60 days, what is that?
Well, yeah.
A lot of, how many, what is that? 60 times 30, right? 100, 1,800 requests of data to see like, what's our conversion rate and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, because I just needed to. So on average, over the last few months, it's been high 50% open rate, about 10 to 15% click-through rates, and I had like 5 or 6 meetings and 4 new customers out of it. So I I tried. Each time I was doing it to different types of prospects too. So like one time I was doing just uh, like VP level or director level type of prospecting, like trying to go in and trying to connect with people at that level first. Um, well, I did that twice. I did one for like big companies that had 100 plus employees, like uh, bigger revenue style companies. Now, uh, in this one, I'm specifically going after the C level suite, so CMO, CEO, COO, um, of like under 50 employees, but still like 5 to 25 million in revenue, but like a lower head count. Um, what I found in the first couple batches of stuff was they were just more responsive. What good, bad, or indifferent, right? Like they just interacted more. Um, Whereas the customers I got out of it were one was an agency, and two other were other business other like businesses. But they in 2 instances already, and I only just started this. I would reach out to the CMO, and then I got a senior VP book a meeting of the same company, right? So like the CMO like referred it down to somebody else, and then they booked a meeting. So I'm assuming that like, hey, vet this, right? Like, is this something that we can do? Is this something that might help? And then that person booked the meeting. So my I think there's going to be more of that as I start adding more volume to it.
Yeah, totally. I'm curious if we could just as like a little, I don't know if we can call it a role play, but for the sake of the painting industry, people that might be listening, can you give me like pretend I'm a painting company? What is and I'll say the answers that I know my clients would have. Walk me through like I reach out to you and say, "Hey, I hear you're really good with automating and streamlining our sales process. How could you help us?"
Yeah, sure. So first I would ask is, are you looking to learn how to take over the process internally? Is there somebody internally within your organization that they're responsible for HubSpot in general, like to manage it long term? And if that's a yes or no.
Yeah, so question, yeah, my answer to that would be is that can my sales manager do that, or are you saying like we need to have like a tech person that's a HubSpot internal person?
It could definitely be the salesperson. It's just somebody that's going to um, because there's
Champion.
yeah, someone that's going to champion and be that HubSpot person internally. So when 6 months after we're done working together, something needs to change in the process. They have the knowledge, they know everything, how everything was built, and they can go and implement that change and own it from that point. And it could be anybody. It doesn't have to be a tech person. Just somebody that's familiar with the business and has an understanding of how the software was crafted together to support it.
So I would say again for most companies that I'm working with, they have it. They most of them have a sales manager. their knowledge of how to do it or their technical expertise is probably mid to low, but they understand sales processes and people. So would that work? Are you saying that we would need to have, or the expectation that you're setting is you need this, someone on your team should be an expert at the end of this, or you would advise them?
So that's the reason why I asked the question, because there's two ways, there's two approaches that I take to it. So either I'm going to do we're going to go right into like weekly sessions. We're going to go through Miro together. We're going to build everything out together. Like, so I'm purposefully kind of like holding back in order to show you specific things and teach you HubSpot. But it's only valuable if somebody's going to own it inside the organization after the engagement. If not, it's okay. What I end up doing is I'll do a 30-day project where we'll have like one day, one or two meeting kickoff. We'll map everything out together. I will then go build it all out over in the next 30 days. Then we will start sessions for about weekly sessions for 3 months that does implementation and training on that specific process, not necessarily on all the bells and whistles and tweaks, reasons why, like you can't re-enroll an object in a workflow because it's an activity versus something else. Like all those finer points, kind of omit all that, because that's not there's no one in there there's no one in the organization that's going to have an appreciation for it or going to be building workflows themselves, right? So we'll do it in that regard, and then I kind of
So you will do it for them if they say we don't have someone internally and that's just not a priority for us right now. So you say, okay, great, I can build all this for you and I'll train you guys how to use it, as opposed to the other side where I'll train someone how to build it and then they're training the team.
yeah, I prefer to train somebody, but I know because I'm able to train and able to do that. I also can build it probably much faster than anybody else could, right? So I don't want to. One, I don't. It makes sense for me as a business to offer that, but then wrap in, include training, weekly training, that kind of tell that at the end of it, go to monthly sessions and kind of just be there as a resource going forward. When things pop up or when changes need to be made, we're still in an engagement. So the build happens a lot faster because I build it for you. The training still happens, but the training is more on the using the process rather than building the process, right?
Got it.
And then
Yeah.
the ongoing like monthly sessions is really just checkups, right? And just to see if things need to be tweaked, or you take a list of stuff that you want to change, or maybe the business is changing, maybe there's new things happening. We're at least engaged at some level, and I'm available outside of those sessions too. So I'm in, I get added to Slack and other issues. I'm trying to drive people more to emailing my inbox, right, in HubSpot. It gets a little easier to manage, but we'll get there. That type of stuff.
How are you managing your implementation of this? Is this like project management wise? Are you using like Asana, Airtable? Like what tools do you use to?
HubSpot, all HubSpot.
So you're using the project management tool in HubSpot?
Well, no, no, no. I wish they would do something with that project management tool, but that seems like a
Because I was going to say it's been terrible when I've tried it, but
yeah. This and the templates they have in there are not really that great either. No, but I've like implemented my own because I didn't want to have too many systems myself. Um, and I've used all of them. Most recently, I've used Basecamp when I first started doing all this stuff. I went back to Basecamp after years, which was really good. But what I ended up doing is um, keeping track of contracts and engagements as part of sales, as part of a separate sales pipeline after it's closed one. And then I'm keeping track of sessions, so how many sessions people have, and the dates just as meetings that get attached to the deals. And then for the work, there's a stage in the pipeline that's, active projects. I kind of just work through those on I book out. So when I'm implementing or I'm doing it myself, I book out in my calendar as if it was a session, right? So I plan it out in my calendar. So and it takes up a slot as if I was going to do an hour session instead. Instead, yeah, I'm just building it during that time. So between my calendar and just keeping track in HubSpot, I was doing it in service tickets. Um, I actually spent most of my day today trying to work with some integrations and custom code some stuff to try to do better with keeping track of sessions. Um, but I think I'm going to be moving it to just keep it in sales pipelines just to keep like who's active, who's coming, like who's ending in 30 days, and like that's going to kick off other processes to see if they want to extend or other sales stuff at that point. Yeah.
So I realized I started to ask about this painting thing and then we got off track, but let's go back to it because I'm genuinely curious to what level of value do you think uh, you could provide to a painting company? And most of these painting companies are residential primary, and then they also do commercial work. I tend to think that a lot of times the companies that don't do commercial work, it's because they don't know how to get commercial work. But my assumption is that with something like Apollo, it would actually be much easier to get commercial work than residential work. Um, and I know that a lot of businesses have dabbled with the just seasonality of painting is crazy busy in the summer, and then they usually have temporary workers that are working in the summer that then they drop in size. The business does drop headcount to make it through the slower winter, but then they have to ramp back up in the summertime. So basically, the amount that you can grow in the summertime is dependent on how the least like you want to drop as little as possible in the winter, but you have to be able to keep those people busy because you can't triple in size in from winter to summer. If that makes sense. You can maybe add 40% of your staff additionally, but you have to have trained people that are training the new people, right, as painters. So that's the problem is that every painting company they need more work in the winter. And one way to do that, my hope is through prospecting and leveraging something like what you do for prospecting. And I'm guessing that especially you might not know these answers, but like for uh, commercial buildings and different property managers and things that need to get stuff painted, they are going to it's generally a long lead time for them to make a decision. So prospecting is probably something that painting companies need to be doing year round, but they're looking for commercial winter work to fill that slow time. You know what I mean? So based on that, do you have any other questions to decide how or what you might be able to do to solve that problem, or how would you explore that?
Yeah. So I would, if there's so with the understanding that there's probably this would be more of like something that would need to be built out, and something like what you showed before is like ultimately the blueprint, right? Like of workflows and kind of what how to go from uh, uh, does it talk about, or does it go into like lead gen type of processes and marketing processes, or is it more so like when somebody raises their hand and they're ready for a quote, this is all the steps that have to happen in order to.
Oh, my process. Yeah, my process is like once a customer submits a web form or says I'm interested. So my process doesn't have the marketing or sales prospecting. I'm not offering that right now, which is why this is very intriguing to me because I basically am helping systemize operationally. And I mean, it's the sales process, but it's the sales process after they have a lead that says, give me a quote.
Yes, yes, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I think to if there's somebody, and it could be a sales manager, it could be an owner, it could be anybody. Um, the biggest thing with prospecting is consistency, and is being able to put this kind of system in place, like I'm working with my company Tactic is it's automatic, right? So there's like 7 or 8 touch points in this whole sequence, and there's um, the goal, especially with commercial stuff, you want to try to build rapport. You have to try to build, trust is interactions over time, right? The more people trust you is basically how many times they interact with you over a period of time. So if we can automate a lot of the first touch points, right? By the time you get on the phone with them, or by the time you actually, if they utilize the HubSpot meeting tools, and they can book a face-to-face meeting on Zoom, or a site visit, um, to that end, like that would be the end goal in my mind for a prospecting effort, a prospecting process, right? Is to get the salesperson a meeting. That's it. That's all that really can do is get them at that at bat, and it's really like, um, it's like the it's a numbers game, right? You can only get in front of so many people, and on the residential side, residential's, to me, that's more wide net marketing type of stuff. Like that's stuff that has to come in, um, from various sources, right? I'm sure there's, like painting companies are probably on like Angie's List and referrals and Facebook groups and all these other things that are probably, they probably get a ton of stuff from referrals. So as part of a prospecting effort in general would be to try to amplify the referral bit part of the business with a process, right? So doing some sort of marketing, or uh, um, have a process in place when a job finishes to have a survey go out, ask them for a review, and all these things, and create a process around that to increase the residential work. And maybe that's something you want to. I don't know if I don't know the painting industry. I don't know if you just can't do. I guess you can't do outdoor painting, right, in the wintertime. I don't know, but
Indoor painting, you definitely can do.
yeah. So like if um, you know maybe that's prime time for some people to do it, right? Like maybe that's a time that, somebody that was on the fence about a project, that you can go back to and say, hey, like maybe we're able to do something a little bit better because because of the seasonality, right? While still focusing on automating the commercial side, because again, the commercial side is going to be those connections, right? You have to have that meeting. Somebody that, like a facility manager or a director of operations, or somebody is going to have to hire the company to do the job, right? But the question is, like, you don't know who is in need, so you have to talk to everybody. You don't know when somebody's going to need a or want to redo their conference room, or redo all 500 conference room in a whole building. Like, there's no way of really knowing when that's going to be. So uh, that's why it's a volume numbers game, because you have to try to talk to as many people, or get in front of as many people as possible over a long period of time, because then your chances are greatly increased, right? Rather than, um, kind of hunting and picking, trying to find, one or two people, or going to knock on a couple doors, in a day, when you can get to, 50, 60 people in a day. At least just get in front of them and get the process going.
Totally. No, that's super interesting. I definitely want to chat more about that. I'm keeping an eye on time here. Last couple of questions I have for you are, well, I guess I almost forgot. I always say is if everyone comes to a podcast with kind of some preconceived thoughts or things that you may or may not be wanting to share, any other like closing remarks, ideas, tools, resources that you want to share with everybody before I go into my wrap up questions?
Uh, no, not particular. I mean, just, with consistency. Like everything is just being, consistent, and sticking to a process. That's once you have uh, once you have what you're trying to do, at least a goal in mind. Getting there is going to be, you're going to have ups and downs, but you're going to have at least a pathway. You at least help you carve a pathway to get to where you're going. And using tools like HubSpot, and utilizing, resources like you and I are meant to help get there faster.
Totally. What are your three book recommendations for us?
So I don't have any. And it's fine. My wife's a literacy specialist as well, so I don't read very often. But I do have, a podcast that the HubSpot Agency Unfiltered podcast I listen to pretty often. Every every time there's a new one. There's a lot of great resources on there, and they talk a lot about the HubSpot, a lot about HubSpot's new features and other agencies and how they are doing different processes or doing different things. And that's where I'm staying mostly up to date on things in terms of HubSpot, as well as the product updates section in HubSpot. So if you have a HubSpot portal, you go into product updates. There's a beta section where you can actually sign up for public betas. So I that's how I got into prospecting. That prospecting feature so early was because I was just kind of keep that up to mind. I try to do I try to get a new certificate every quarter. One of the HubSpot Academy certificates, just as a place to get some more
Continue
information.
learning.
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah.
I also do a lot of development stuff. So a lot of JavaScript development in terms of coding. So I also listen to a syntax podcast and other kind of general programming type of content. Helps like when you're able to think in processes, right, and think in sections, like being able to code, or at least like having a fundamental knowledge of how to write like a simple program. Like, it's all procedural ultimately, right? So that's how you look at that's how I look at businesses. That's how I look at processes. That's how I look at HubSpot workflows. So staying up to date on those kind of practices also help.
And did you say it's called the Syntax Podcast?
Yeah,
Or is that
syntax. Yeah, syntax FM, syntax.fm. They talk a lot about all different type of coding practices and stuff, and it's a really good resource.
that's awesome. And the final question, what is your favorite movie?
So my favorite movie is the original Top Gun, but the Top Gun 2 is definitely a very close second.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was blown away by how good the second movie was. I thought that was
Yeah,
very, very well done. It's hard
I
to
didn't
do.
I
It's
didn't
hard to
have
do it's hard to do a follow up or a sequel to a movie like that. And I thought it was like, how are they gonna bring Maverick back in? Because clearly, he's gonna come into it. And the way that they did, I was like, that was creative.
yeah, it was definitely good. Yeah, so that's me.
Awesome. And if people want to get in touch with you, how do you recommend, or what's your preferred method of contact?
Yeah, just shoot me an email, jw@usetactic.com, or check out the site, usetactic.com. And if you have any questions or anything bugging you inside of HubSpot, just let me know. I'm happy to help.
Awesome. And is your tactic site all built in HubSpot CMS?
That is, yes.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time, James. I appreciate it. We'll be in touch.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for your attention and listening to this episode of The Pursuit of Purpose. Your feedback and comments mean the world to me. If you liked what you heard, please take a second, leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. If you've got suggestions for future episodes or just want to say hi, shoot me an email at chris@chriskiefer.com. Don't forget, I make it a point to include all the links to the books, movies, and resources mentioned on this episode in the show notes. You can see those directly below in the description or on my website, chriskiefer.com. Thanks so much, guys.